Hello and welcome to yet another tutorial by LevelUp Networks. Today we're going to show you how to install Windows Server 2019 on VirtualBox and also how to set it up as a domain controller and finally join my Windows 10 virtual image into that particular domain. Just so I won't make it too long, this tutorial will be separated into 3 different parts, one of each with the 3 topics I described. So the first thing obviously you would need to do if you haven't done so already is to download VirtualBox. I will put the link down in the description, and also you will need to download Windows Server 2019, which I will also put the description downstairs. Well, not downstairs, underneath the video. So the first thing we do is open VirtualBox, which as you can see I have it already opened, and we're gonna set up a new image. So we click on new over here, and the first thing we got to do is give it a name. So let's make it pretty obvious, Windows Server 2019. Now this, in theory, the version should recognize what it is, but in this case it hasn't. So let's choose the appropriate one, and it would be Windows 2019 64-bit. Now by default it will add 2 gigs of RAM. Now I will do a little bit more. So the way to calculate this, each gig of RAM is essentially 1024 megabytes. So let's get our calculator here. So if we go 1024, and let's put 8 gigs of RAM times 8, so that's 8192. So here we edit it and we put 8 gigs of RAM, so that's 8192. Now ideally you can set it up to make it quicker without a virtual disk, so you just set up all the settings you want, but in this case we will create one. So we just leave the default, we just create a virtual hard disk now, and we click on create down here. Here you put where you want to store. By default I have it on my G drive under VMs, and it will create the folder Windows Server 2019 and create the virtual drive image, the VDI. And you can say how much disk space to assign to it. Now you only need 32 gigs as a minimum requirement for Windows Server 2019, but let's put a little bit more because obviously we're going to keep this for further tutorials, or in your case if you want to keep it as a production server or as a test environment, you'll have to eventually obviously add more software to it if you wish, more features, more roles, Windows updates. So take all that in consideration, because if you don't do this now, then you will literally have to either expand the disk later, which can be a bit of a pain, or you'll have to just restart the whole process and start from scratch. So I got plenty of space, so let's put it as 100 gigs. That should be more than enough. And you can say to dynamic allocate it now, or to put it a fixed size. Now what's the difference? So dynamically allocated means that essentially it will grow as your server grows until the size of 100 gigs. Or if you put fixed size, it will right now put 100 gigs into your hard drive. But obviously the whole process will take a bit longer as it has to create that particular hard drive file. So I'll leave it as dynamic for the moment. So let's create this. And that is the basic for that. Now let's configure a bit the settings. So make sure that Windows Server 2019 has been selected, and you go up here to settings. Now this is just the default, so let's go through everyone. So advanced is once again if you want to change where for example, your snapshots are going to be created. So the good thing about VirtualBox is that you can create snapshots. So what is that? So essentially, let's say for example you do, I don't know, you install Windows Server 2019. So the first thing maybe you want to do is ensure that you do a snapshot, so that will create a backup of that image at that point in time. So then if you mess things up, you can always revert to the initial snapshot after you have installed everything. Now, I like to make sure that we have the clipboard and drag and drop. So let's put this bi-directional, which means it will work both ways, from your computer to the VirtualBox image and from the virtual server to your desktop. Now here, if you fancy, you can put a description. This is just so whoever uses this image will know what it is, but in this case we won't put anything because it'll just be myself using this. This encryption, if you want to secure it. Now, because this is not a live server, I don't think we need to put any encryption into it. So let's go back now to system. So this is once again how much RAM we have into it. So we put 8 gigs, and this is if you want to put the boot order and to enable. So we don't want the floppy drive. We don't care about that. We will need the optical because we're going to set that optical drive to be the actual ISO file we downloaded from the Windows Evaluation Center to install 2019. And obviously we need the hard drive. We don't need the network to be bootable, as we don't have any PXE on our network. Then the chipset, you can leave as default. Pointing device, this is if you have, so USB tablet is if you have any sort of USB enabled mouse, which I think most of us now do nowadays. But if you have the legacy type PS2 mouse, then you would select accordingly. And then this you can leave as is. In the processor, we can say how many cores you want to use. So at the moment we are using 1 core, so I'm going to put at least 4 cores. And then finally in acceleration, this is if you want to just add a bit more or change the type of virtualization interface you want. Now on display, I recommend to leave the default maximum 128 memory megabytes. If you have more monitors, if you want to display your server across 2 monitors, 3, 4, depending on how many you have, this is where you would choose it. I have 3 screens, but I'll leave it at 1 at the moment. If you want Super VGA, or just no graphics controller. Now I have half decent sort of medium level graphics card, so I will enable the 3D acceleration. Just because I want it to work a bit more. And you can see if you have, for example, if you're connecting, in this case Windows Server, no, but if you have like a Windows 10 and you want to connect that to an RDP session, you would do it through here. And of course, if you want to start recording when you're running things on the server, you can do it from here. In this case, I will leave all of these as blank. Now, in terms of storage, so as you can see here, this is a hard drive we just created. And this is the optical drive. So this is where we choose the image we downloaded. So in this case, I will select it. So you select the empty drive here, and we go to the little CD-ROM here, and we shall choose the disk file. So I have downloaded it. So we have the download here. So this is the Windows 2019. So here we go. We select that. And everything else as default. And then the other things you can play with. For example, if you want audio in your server, I particularly don't care for audio. The type of network. Now this is important because this depends. This section here will depend how your computer will communicate with your physical machine and your physical network. So for example, if you want to keep this particular virtual machine completely independent from your network, you would do as it is, a NAT. And then I will talk about just the next one, which is the bridge adapter. So let's say you want to make this a server a live server on your network. So to fish out, for example, DHCP and all those goodies that you can do through the server. So in that case, you would select the bridged adapter, and you will just configure it to see which card you want it to use on your machine. So you have obviously the Ethernet. You can have also, the VirtualBox Tap is what I use for VPN. This is another VPN, or you can use the wireless. If you have two network cards or a network card and Wi-Fi, as for example I do, I would select a dedicated card for your server if you should go for a bridged adapter. Just so you will use, for example, the Wi-Fi for your desktop and you use the Ethernet for your server. It's up to you. You can use the same one. It's just sort of to separate the networks and use the resources as is. Now, in this case, we are going to use the initial one, which is NATs. So we're going to completely keep it outside of our network. And you can see here that we have a MAC address. So the MAC address is, if you want to change it, you can. You can put, you can put your own MAC address, but in this case, I always like to leave it on your own. And if you're required to have, for example, more than one network adapter. So let's say, for example, you have one NATs adapter for your internet, and then you have the second one for your RAS. You can do that. So you have up to 4 network cards you can connect to it. You just have to enable it and follow if you want NAT, bridge, or whatever you want to use it for. Serial ports. This is some sort legacy. But there are some devices that still use serial ports, so you can configure these as well. Then USB. So let's say here in the USB, by default, it will put it as USB 3. If it doesn't, make sure, if you have USB 3, make sure that you select it. This is not necessary for everything, as it will redirect all your USB devices, like for example your mouse, your keyboard, your webcam. So the more day-to-day used USB controllers, they will already be redirected. But let's say, for example, you have, I don't know, a payment system that requires a USB dongle for you to authorize every payment, because that is not your everyday sort of USB. You would possibly want to add it here so it automatically redirects it to your environment. Now, shared folders. This can come in very handy. This is, let's say, for example, you want to share bidirectionally folders either on the server or on your machine. So let's say, for example, we have, I don't know, a folder on our desktop which has all the software we want to install on the server. So instead of downloading everything, you would just mount your drive there, the folder, and then it would appear on your server itself. Now, this is not something that I usually do, but it's good to know that it can be done. And finally, the user interface. So this would just show you if you want to, display the bottom icons on your display when you open the server. The same goes with the top menu. I'll leave everything as default, as it doesn't really bother me. But some people prefer it when they go on full screen to have the full screen without the menus on the top and the bottom. So that's really it in the basic setup of VirtualBox. So let's press OK. And let's start it up. So once again, make sure it's selected, and it's very quick. You just go to Start, and off it goes. Okay, so there it goes. So as you can see, the step you didn't see because it unfortunately showed on my other screen was that it was selecting, it was asking me which drive we needed to launch the installation from. So I just selected the optical drive where we set up earlier the ISO file for Windows 2019. And then I clicked on Start, and here it goes. Now, I'm gonna probably pause this soon. We'll see how quick it is, but essentially you will see soon, if all goes quick enough, the startup screen for Windows 2019 so we can install it. So let's just wait a few seconds until this goes through, and I'll show you how to set up Windows 2019. Okay, so at the end I did pause it, just because it was taking a bit too long and I don't want to keep you guys waiting. So after the first load, you can see we're at the Windows setup. So this, like every other Windows machine, we just need to choose, the language, the time, and the keyboard. So I'm based in the UK, so let's change the format to the accordingly. Perfect. The keyboard and the time. So the language, obviously, it's only English, because that's the one I downloaded, the United States one. So we press on Next, and we go to Install Now. So as you can see, the setup is starting. So Windows is going to do its usual things. And here we have to choose which version we want. Now in this case, let's just do the desktop experience one. So obviously if you want to just to do the standard evaluation without the desktop experience, that's fine. But as the comment says, this will not install a lot of the GUIs. But for this purpose, we shall install the desktop evaluation, which is the full version. So obviously it will take a bit more space, but this is for, for us to have the full Windows experience. So we go Next. If you want to read this, go ahead. I will choose not to this time, but I will just accept the terms and conditions. Go to Next. Okay, so this is upgrade or custom. Now obviously we haven't installed Windows Server previously to this, so we will go to the custom install. Now from here you can see that we have the 100 gigabytes that we chose when we first set up the virtual image. So, but it's unallocated, and this will be unformatted. So in order, that's hence why none of the other options are available. They're grayed out. So we will go to New. We will apply the whole of the drive. Now at this point, you could partition it if you wish, so you can create multiple drives. But I prefer to allocate all of the space. And then should I need a partition, I will do that from Windows itself. So let's go Apply. Now, to ensure that all Windows features work correctly, Windows might create additional partitions for system files. So this is where Windows, as it says, will partition it accordingly. So we'll allocate some resources just for system files, essentially. So we press OK, and we let it do its magic. Now, hopefully this won't take too long. Essentially what it's doing in the background is creating the partitions, as you can see here. So it put half a gig to the system reserve, 99.5 out of 100 gigs for the partition. Now, I will click Next. Here you have the option to format it, but if you click Next, it will do that through the whole process anyways. So let's go Next. Before I click Next, obviously please ensure that you have selected the right partition. Obviously, if you go to the first one, it won't let you. But if you do multiple partitions, then it's crucial that you choose the right one. In this case, it's a no-brainer. The first one doesn't let me, so it has to be the second one. So once again, select it and press Next. Right, so here's going to go through the entire process of Windows 2019 installation. I will pause the video here because this might take a little bit. So until then, I'll see you in a little bit. So that took about half an hour to get to this point where it has installed all the core installation files for Windows 2019, the basic features, the basic updates, and now the installation is just finishing up. So essentially, as you can see now, it's going to restart. So let's click, we can wait, or let's click restart now. So there we go. All the basics are installed. So here it's just obviously because we still have the ISO selected, it's asking us. We will remove that afterwards as we won't need the virtual file anymore to install Windows because we've installed it already. And now we're going to go back into Windows 2019 with the full installation. So let's just wait a little bit till it loads up. Now, on a live environment outside of VirtualBox with a real server, it really shouldn't take half an hour to install everything. But bear in mind that the server drives are much faster. All the hardware in a server is much better than on a normal PC. Hence why it would be faster. But do expect to allocate some time for this, even if you don't do it on VirtualBox, because you are installing quite a large file. The Windows Server downloadable file is close to 5 gigs. So yeah, it needs to go through quite a bit of installation on your drives. Okay, so we're almost there. Just getting things ready, as you can see. So it shouldn't take too much longer. So what we'll do is once we actually set up Windows 2019, we will then stop the video and we will create another one so you can see how to set up Windows 2019 in order to become a domain controller, as we initially said, and then eventually set up the networking, and finally we will connect my Windows 10 virtual machine to that server and make it part of the domain so we can have a fully working networking system within VirtualBox itself. So it shouldn't take too much longer. Let's just wait a few more seconds to get things rolling. In the meantime, if you like this video, obviously don't forget to subscribe and to click on the little bell so you will hear, or you will not hear them, but you will get notifications every time we put a new tutorial. Don't forget to share this link with all your network or your friends in order to subscribe to the channel as well. It will be greatly appreciated to make this little community grow in order to get, for lack of a better word, useful tutorials for your everyday and for even a little bit more advanced users. Windows has restarted again, so we just need to wait for it to come back up. Shouldn't be too much longer, so let's see what happens. Now the process obviously is going to be for any server you can install, specifically 2016 and 2019 pretty much will be the same. Okay, so like I said, Windows restarted after getting things ready, and now it's prompting us for a password, which I shall put it right now. Click on finish. Well, there you go. I just did that on purpose so you could see if it works or not. So let's try again. Okay, there we go. So after you put your password twice correctly, it will finally finish the last settings in order to finally go into Windows 2019. At this stage, it's pretty straightforward. And there we go. I think Windows might be restarting again. Let's see if that's the case. No, not anymore. All right, so we're in. Now, obviously, because you're in VirtualBox, if you press Control Delete, it's not really going to work. That's going to just do your control delete on your machine. So we just have to go keyboard. So input, keyboard, insert, control, alt, delete. And there we go. We put the password we just chose and press enter. There we go. So it's creating our user profile, doing the last minute configurations for our profile, and shortly we should be there. There we go. Last few things. Hard drive is twirling away, and there we go. Perfect. Now, obviously, as you can see, we're using the evaluation. So hence we have that notice. So do we want to allow this to be discoverable? Well, best practice, I always put no. You don't want people plugging into your network and finding all your devices. So obviously this is a controlled network in a virtual environment, but nonetheless, it's good to always put no, in my opinion. And there you have it. We are in Windows 2019. So I'll stop this video now, and the next video we will have, which I will put on the end credits, will be exactly to configure this server as an Active Directory and as the main controller essentially. Thank you very much, and we'll see you shortly.